Hi, this is John Murphy. I'll be the MC for this briefing on website analytics and some recent privacy regulations in Europe and California. The briefing is by Norbert Korny. He's a software architect with more than 2 decades of experience in system integration, building data processing pipelines, and data visualization. The current version of Google Analytics will be turned off July of 2023, but you're able to migrate to the new version, GA4, today. Norbert, what are our options?
Hello everyone, I'm Norbert. The new year is right behind the corner, and so is the change in Google Analytics. Let me tell you about it. But first, a couple of things about me. Like Sean mentioned, I'm a developer for past 2 decades, and I've been building solutions mostly in fintech, namely data processing, data visualizations, some of them real-time. Now I'm building trivia analytics with a mission to make analytics trivial and privacy-friendly. The topics I'm covering today are: why now? What does it mean for your business? How's the new version different? What are the deadlines? And will analytics remain free? But first, let me ask you, do you use Google Analytics or any other similar solution? And if you do, how did you implement it on your website? Typical answers I get: I use WordPress, Shopify, or Wix plugin. I modified the website myself, or I had the developer do that for me. It seems true that WordPress runs nearly the half of the internet websites, and cool to see there are a lot of technically skilled folks that implement them themselves. So why now? World's moving to a more private browsing, and this tends to be a focus of the California Privacy Rights Act, which will be in effect come January 1st, with the enforcement starting the next year on the 1st of July. Coincidentally, Google will sunset its old version of analytics at the very same date. The most strict privacy laws in the US apply to California, which essentially means any business operating in the US. It's no longer a point of consumer preference, but a regulation. What does it mean for your business? Do you need to have a cookie banner? All things being equal, you don't. That is, unless you're collecting personal data that is not essential for running your business. In other words, any data which would enable you to identify an individual or a household if they're repeatedly visiting your site or using your service. These are most commonly practices as analytics or advertising. Now, if you do use such practices, you need to provide a way to opt out. This can take a form of an easily discoverable, clearly titled link, do not share or sell my personal information, and limit the disclosure of my sensitive personal information. Can be 2 links, but need to be both of those. There's a catch. If you offer a service in EU, GDPR is the toughest privacy and security law in the world. If you do so, you would have to implement a cookie banner. But legally, there wouldn't be an easy way to enforce it. So unless you're a Google-sized company, you should be fine and wouldn't be worth the trouble. Despite the term cookie banner, it should be technology agnostic, and you should notify the user if you're able to link an individual to a point in time. And there's an exception. If your services are aimed at minors, especially less than 16 years of age, you need to have an opt-in consent as opposed to opt-out. And for children under 13 years, you need to get a verifiable parental consent, in which case you might as well reconsider using these technologies at all. Yeah, cookie banner. And cookie banner can make look your website from this on the left to that thing on the right. And there's a reason why most cookie banners are annoying. It's by design and are nudging you to accept it all and be done with it. For example, Trivia Analytics doesn't collect personal data and try to build analysis without any such invasive techniques. So What about privacy policy? You should have a clear privacy policy that states how you collect personal information is just fair to your customers. But in fact, you're legally obliged to do so. You definitely need one if you want to use Google login, or they wouldn't make it work for you. And if you use Google Analytics, you definitely must have one disclosing the fact, otherwise you're in breach of your contract with them. If you don't have a privacy policy, I can recommend you 3 tools you might find useful. Basecamp made its privacy policy open source on GitHub. There's a ubenda.com and getterms.io. How's Google Analytics different from the old version? Google Analytics was complicated as it was, but GA4 took that to another level. It's difficult to use, buries even the most basic data, making it difficult for regular business owners, but for experienced marketers as well. That's why its introduction was met with a considerable backlash in the business community. Meanwhile, some people switched back to a universal analytics in a futile attempt to wait out the transition. Some people do enjoy the overall complex dashboard. Even now, you'll probably need a manual to set up most essential basic reports, which may be an indication of a platform shift to a more advanced data analysis tool built for data scientists, or by extension, more lucrative businesses employing data scientists, in other words, enterprises. What questions are you trying to answer when you look at your analytics? What some other people told me: do I have more visitors? What are my popular pages? Who's sending me traffic? Did I miss anything? Yeah, the referral sources are quite useful to know if there has been an effect of posting your content or your links on other websites, other blogs or forums. Conversion tracking, more advanced. And conversion tracking was a popular theme on the Google Analytics and will be a nightmare to set up on the GA4. So if you use Google Analytics, there's a history you might be interested in. And come July 1st, next year, GA will stop collecting your data. And you have at least 6 months to grab your data with an exact cutoff date to be specified. And you can have your history, but not on Google. There's no way to import it to GA4. You can export a PDF or Excel file if it's less than 5,000 rows, or you can use reporting API, but it would be quite a stretch or quite a detour to take if you're just after a history. There are a couple of third-party tools that can grab it and visualize it for you.
So you're saying, Norbert, that at the end of next year, GA Universal data completely goes away?
Right. It goes away. Not only that, you have no way of importing it to GA4, the new version of the Google Analytics.
Yeah, I know that. I was just hoping that we're still going to have the data, the old data to look at.
It would definitely make sense, but it did a lot of times. I used Google products and they just killed it year after launching it, and I lost my data as well.
Thank you.
So to be clear, all they've committed to is through the end of December 2023. That doesn't mean they may not change, but as of right now, if you had to plan, it's gone by the end of next year.
And you will have a longer time span if you use paid version of Google Analytics, but more on that later.
Question on connectors, Norbert, are you going to cover that later or should we cover that now? Are there connectors to import the data into things like Power BI?
Not that I know of, but I believe there are, since there is reporting API and all these things, if they can connect to the reporting API after you authorize it, should be able to import it. I'm not aware of specific implementations, but I would like to believe there are some.
Oh, so the question is, what if I don't want to lose my data? How do I migrate it? How do I get it off of the platform? How do I get it where I can keep it?
You can export not the raw data, but specific reports. Like you can export it in the form of PDF or data sheet, but there's a limit of 5,000 rows. There's been some hacks to overcome it, but most of them are not working as of today. Again, that limit does not apply if you use paid version. Thank you. Thank you for all the comments. And you definitely rely on historical data to make sense of the current results. So you probably compare quarters or years or follow trends to make sense. Okay, so question if the Google Analytics will remain free. And it is indeed free, but there ain't no such thing as free lunch. And if you're not paying for the product, you become the product. Google not just tracks and stores your data, it effectively owns it and uses it for monetization purposes. In other words, they make money off of you. You can own your data with the Google Premium Google Analytics 360 starting at $150K a year. That might give you an idea how much your data is worth to them. As a paid user, you are still subject to the UA shutdown, but you are entitled to a couple of benefits like longer time spent to back up your history or having more than 5,000 rows. But for me, I don't know if it would be worth it. So what about the alternatives? A couple of noteworthy ones are the Matomo, formerly Pivik, and they branch out as a Pivik Pro as well. And it's a more sophisticated, somewhat complicated tool, allegedly privacy friendly, and its pricing scale with the visitors of your website. There's Snowplow, there's a multi-platform behavioral analytics tool, which you can host yourself, but it's quite overwhelming. And there's Trivia Analytics I'm building that it doesn't use cookie banner. You don't need to opt out. No complicated setup because it does not collect any personally identifiable data. You get answers to commonly asked questions, as what are your page views, visits, popular pages, sources of traffic, what parts of the world you're getting your visitors from, what devices and browsers are they using, and helps you focus on the right part of your business. So what did we talk about today? On July 1st, the Google Analytics will close its doors for the general public and will stop collecting data. And you will have at least half year to grab your history. You don't need a banner if you don't use analytics that collects personally identifiable information. If you do, you need to have an easily discoverable way to opt out. Beware though if your services are aimed at minors. And you should definitely have a clear privacy policy. If you have any questions, please drop them in the chat and feel free to reach out. There's my email address. I'll be happy to answer anything I can.
So Rosemary, how else do you use the historical data? What kind of benchmarking, or how do you take advantage of it?
Well, I suppose I do a lot of comparison when I look at how page views and behavior and things like bounce rate are changing over time. You might particularly look at that to see how evergreen content like blogs are performing? Are they still gaining traction, or have they just, continued to decline, which is what often happens with blogs? So
But-
I do a lot of comparisons between time periods to see how performance is changing.
And how often do you look back? Do you look back like quarter over quarter, year over year, 3-year trend?
Usually year over year, the same time period in the previous year, because you've got seasonality, so you don't want to be looking at a summer period and compare it to February, March, April, right? Which are usually strong months in B2B.
Right. You want to go back to the same period a year ago. Have you seen any distortions introduced by COVID?
Well, the biggest thing I find is that we can no longer filter out a lot of all the employees because they're working from home. And I think that's a real problem because I think it's just distortion. Now, some years ago, we did a real examination into a company that had, I think, about 5,000 employees. And we found that only about 15% of all the traffic was internal. So I don't know what it's like now, but 15 to 20% being employees hitting on your site instead of customers, that's changes the equation.
Oh, and we had a question. I apologize. Let me go pull it in because we had a question right up front. So Fred asked, do you think the Google ads attract a potential customer to an established business that didn't exist before? Is that, Fred, you want to unmute and put a little color on that, or? Well, that's his question. So he's converted us his question. So do you have any perspective on, I'll ask Norbert and then we'll throw it open. We have quite a talented group of people today on the call, but let's give Norbert first crack and then.
My take is the Google is trying to convert the analytics platform to a tool to sell Google ads. Essentially, attract more sophisticated people, enterprises that are able to identify the keywords and how they can implement it in Google Ads. And I don't know if it would work for a newly started business. I personally would try another channel before paying for ads.
I'll make I'll make one observation. Sometimes what you see is you're pulling people down the funnel faster, but they were already in your funnel, and so that's not necessarily a good use of money. You want to try and determine, is the ad bringing somebody in that's actually a first-time visitor, or are you just kind of preaching to the converted? And any other folks want to give a perspective on the benefits or drawbacks to Google Ads?
I'll make a few comments. I think many clients want to rank for 2 phrase keywords often that are highly competitive. And it's often impossible to do that because, page 1 and 2 are often filled with publisher sites. And paid advertising is often the only way that they can rank for those highly competitive phrases.
So you're saying it's a way to complement SEO efforts. If you're up against people that have got much better kind of SEO, then the ads can cut through that.
Well, sure. And so let's say you're looking, your keyword is like fraud mitigation, right? So you've got all these big publishers, platforms that are all about just writing content. They're not solution providers. And they often, because they have in-depth content, they have a lot of content, they have authority websites, they're just naturally going to do better than a solution company, a product company that decides to write 1 or 2 blog posts on fraud mitigation. with, blog posts need links pointing to them, and that's another really difficult thing to get. So yes, I think in a lot of cases, paid does shore up complicated competitive phrases that clients can't rank for.
No, that's valuable perspective.
Interesting.
We had a question from Joanne, which is she uses Ahrefs, which gives analytics of websites in addition to some other data. Do you think that Ahrefs is a good substitute for Google Analytics?
From what I gather, Ahrefs doesn't count page views, but please correct me if I'm wrong here. I only know so much about that tool. I know it's popular regarding the sources of traffic, but I'm not familiar with other features.
So I can tell you from comparing Href data to Google Analytics data for the same pages, the numbers are just not consistent. They're not correct in Href. I mean, it can be a guide, but it's not accurate, in my opinion, from what I've seen.
What about the SEM Rush?
Same thing. The numbers, they don't know exactly who's coming, how many people are coming to your site, right? Because they're using things that they just have a different way to track traffic. They don't know your email programs, that you're driving to your site, for example.
So what other software will have that data about who is coming to your website?
So Google Search Console would be the best place to look for traffic to your site. And that's only Google organic traffic that it's measuring.
That's right. Yes, that's a very good answer. It's only Google organic traffic, right?
But typically that's more than 50%. It can be up to 65% of a good website's traffic. So it's a pretty good way to
right.
What your traffic's like.
So even after Google Analytics is gone, we can still use Google Search Console for more or less the same data, right?
Oh, I have to upgrade to GA4. There's no reasonable alternative that's free unless you want to pay a lot of money.
Well, so he mentioned 4 low-cost options. So the stat counter, the Matomo. Here, I'll put it up again. But he mentioned that earlier. There's these actually collect analytics. The Matomo, Snowplow, Trivia Analytics, Stat Counter. They instrument the website and collect analytics.
But they're not free.
They're not free. They're not free.
But can you set them up to track conversions and events?
No, they're basic. So that's not, they don't track, I don't believe they track conversions because they're not tracking personally identifiable information.
Yeah, Sean, and they do have a stat counter has a free version, and it limits the amount of back data it keeps. I think it's only 90 days or something like that. But for me, for my use, it's fine. But if you're trying to do long-term trends and things like that, you have to pay.
That's interesting. I think Matomo is quite sophisticated, but it can get pricey. And the thing is, you gotta pick if you're gonna implement the analytics yourself, like the GA4, where you definitely need a manual or someone skilled at data analysis, or you will pay a couple of bucks a month. And you wouldn't be able to rely on the Google Search Console solely, because some of the traffic is coming from different sites, and that's the data you would be missing. And that would be probably the most interesting data as well.
Yeah, this shows Matomo at 23 a month. I'm not sure what the others are, but that's kind of order
I
of
believe it,
magnitude you're looking at.
right. That they probably scale with the traffic, and
That's
so
50,000 hits a month. So
yeah. The solution I'm building, you own your data. I don't know about the others, but I believe Matomo does not keep your data for themselves as Google does.
other questions on this? It's difficult to move off of free, but as he pointed out, free is not always exactly free, right? Oh, here it is, and Rosemary put a link into the
Right, we're doing yes, Sean, we're doing a meetup over on the content marketing site. And it's going to really it's going to walk through reports and how to customize them easily. And we've taken what Norbert talks about as being a complicated UI, which I totally agree with you. And we've made some customizations to it so that it's a little easier for people who are so used to GA Universal to make that change over to GA4.
okay, well, that'll be good.
That will be awesome, and you're one of the few, because most of people, including me, find it too complicated.
No, it is complicated, but we're just trying to help our clients get started and take some baby steps to getting into GA4, because it's so incredibly different, right?
You know,
Perfect.
I have one more question. Okay, so what's the difference between GA4 and Google Search Console?
Well, as far as I can tell, GA4 is the traditional traffic analysis from different sources, different than the Google search.
Okay, so I'll take a shot. So Google Analytics you modify every page on your site to add a small piece of code that then tracks information about visitors and other activity on that page. Okay. The Google Search Console talks to the Google robot, to the Google spiders, and it tells you if they're having trouble with your site. So they'll talk about unreachable pages. They look at the Google search spider's efforts to analyze your site. That's different from visitor behavior on your site. It's two completely different problems, right? They're both important.
All I have on my website is a request for me to call people back again. One thing, and they actually have to select that, and they say, I would like information. And then I have another one which does a similar thing. It says, would you like to be on my email list? Doesn't sound like I need to do anything special with those two pages only. Is that correct?
From what I gather, you don't, because you are using the data for properly running your business. You're not using it to match an individual or a household to a point in time where you can sneak up on them and track them, in other words.
I see. Okay. Yeah, I've stayed away from that kind of stuff, but that's just me. Maybe I'm missing business. I don't know.
Yeah, so about the opt-out part, if my website have blocks and I said, you know, if you want to subscribe here, subscribe, put in your email here, and we don't ever sell you information anywhere. And if they don't want to receive it, they can just unsubscribe anytime they want with each notification, just like a Substack newsletter. You know, you don't like it to receive anymore, just unsubscribe. I mean, what else do I have to do on my end to opt out?
You're fine. I believe you're fine, because you're collecting the data in a way that is essential for operating your business.
Right.
So the email rules are different from the web rules. The opt-out is about what kind of cookie information you're gathering.
If we don't use cookie gathering,
then there's no opt-out, because there's nothing to opt out of.
Right.
And then the other is covered like by CAN spam and those kind of regulations around, you've got to provide an unsubscribe with every message, et cetera, right? So it seems like you're kosher.
Yeah.
And still, if you have a consumer or user sign up page and user signs up and browses your website, you essentially are able to identify him or link him to a point in time, but in a way that is essential for your business, because you would need to have that information to provide him with a customized experience or maybe showing him proper products.
Okay.
If you use that for any other purpose, like showing in ads that is not essential for your business, then you would need to have that clearly titled link: do not sell or share my information and limit exposure of my private sensitive information.
Okay.
Because it is commonly practiced to just gather the information and sell a database of emails without being entitled to use it.
Okay. So Google Analytics is not going away, just upgrading to version 4. That and
Right.
before it happens, just export whatever history if you need to, right? Okay.
Right.
Thank you so much. That was helpful and great meeting you all. I gotta go.
All right.
Have a good day.
So if
Sure.
there's more in-depth questions on the Google Analytics 4, the content marketing meetup is doing something. I'm putting that in the chat. And then if you want a copy of this deck as read-only, then here's a link to those slides. And I think I want to thank everybody for coming. If there's no more questions, then we're going to break here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Norbert.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.